I'm going to do a trip report from the trail conditions perspective for Pine Ridge Trail. And going all the way up to the South Vienta Cone area, so just past this Pine Ridge camp. And then we're going to talk about this trail, this big 3 Echo 07, going through here up to the Ridge Road and then down to Terrace Creek and then back over to Pine Ridge. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. Just do a good conditions report for the last 3 days. So this recording is Tuesday, May 31st, 2022. So that's when the condition report is good from. And before I get into that, I want to just recommend that anybody watching this who goes into the wilderness bring a pair of garden clippers so that you can help brush the trail a little bit. So I think this is a way everybody can volunteer to make the trail just a little bit better. If you see brush growing over the trail, you can just clip it with garden clippers that you buy on Amazon and remove it from the trail. Just kind of throw it off the side of the trail. And you'll see brush piles along the trail where volunteers have done this. If everybody who walks Pine Ridge Trail does this, it will help keep the trail in very good, clear, passable condition for all the users. Okay, let's get started. So we'll look at the Gaia GPS topographic maps, and then we might do a little bit in Google Earth as well. And this layer I got here for this track, I downloaded off the FKT website. Additionally, if you haven't used Gaia GPS before, highly recommend this application. If you buy the subscription, you can use all these different layers. So I'm going to go ahead and turn down the USFS visitor layer and turn up the Nat Geo Trails Illustrated layer because it shows some things we want to see. So starting from the Big Sur TrailHead, you drop down into the campground here. That's the state park. And then you hop on trail climbing up the Pine Ridge Trail. It's in really good condition. It's a little bit of a steep section here when you cross this creek. And it's a good climb as you come up this peak and start contouring up and down the gullies here. Now, there's plenty of water. This bad gulch is about 3.3 miles in, and that creek is running. So, if you're ultralight minded, you'll probably, and pretty good at hiking, you'll probably be okay with just a liter of water if you treat at all these springs and just refill your water bottle every time you hit one. So you can refill here at mile 3.3 and then do another mile. You can refill here at Terrace Creek. So that's flowing pretty good right now. We continue north to Barlow Flat. And this Logwood Creek is also flowing, so you could fill there. So lots of great water along this route. From there, let's see here. It's a little confusing because Barlow Flat is up this hill. I'm going to change the layers a little bit. We're going to look at SGS topo. Get some nice topo lines here. All right, so that's Logwood Creek. And from there you climb over this saddle down into Barlow Flat. And the trail has actually rerouted since there's a big landslide there. And so it goes across the creek down here where this mouse is, crosses the creek again on the other side of Barlow Flat, and then climbs back up. So you'll see a post right in the middle of the trail which arrows you down to Barlow Flat campsite. It's basically right here. So follow that. Don't continue walking on the old trail. And it's same thing on the other side. Trail's in great condition from there. Other thing just to note, I saw one tree that had fallen across the trail kind of in this area. It was deadfall and cut that out, so that shouldn't be a problem anymore. So overall, this trail's in really good condition in this segment. Continuing east from Barlow Flat. Can't remember if there's water in this creek drainage. Pretty sure there is in Dolores Creek. Drop down into Skikes. Just keep in mind that this is everybody here goes to sit in the hot springs, and building pools in those geothermal vents is illegal. And honestly, it's a spot I avoid because it doesn't really feel like wilderness to me. So especially on busy 3-day weekends. So that's my recommendation to folks. It's like there's so much to explore in this area. I actually don't recommend looking for going for just the hot springs, because it's what indexes well on the internet when you search for Skikes or Big Sur. But there's so much other magic in the Wild and Scenic River corridor to find in terms of neat pools to swim in and waterfalls to see that don't index well on the internet. So I'll just leave that out there. The other thing I'd note is if you are staying at any campsite, pack out your toilet paper. It's not fair for the volunteers at the Vienta Wilderness Alliance to have to do that for you. So, okay, moving on. When you climb out of Skikes, the trail definitely changes in condition a little bit. It's a little overgrown with grass as you climb this hill east, and you can just tell that most visitors stop at Skikes. They don't continue going further. Our first night we went all the way to Redwood Camp, and it's a pretty big site actually. Holds a good amount of people, and there's some big campsites on both the left and right side of the creek. So if you go to Redwood Camp and it looks full, make sure you can hike up this trail here a little bit and look down, and you can see some big sites that might still be available. So trail's a little rough here, but still very passable. I would call it yellow condition maybe, just because a lot of grass is encroached on the trail. The other thing is there is no water in the drainages coming off this peak, so you need to have enough water to get to Redwood, and if you're hiking it late in the day, it's going to be in the sun, hot, arid, and dry. So just keep that in mind. Okay, next morning we hiked this Round Rock Camp Extension is what I called it, going up to Pine Ridge Campsite, and the spring is still flowing there, so plenty of water up there. This is a big climb, so you can see it climbs just about 3,000 feet in 3.5 miles up to this ridge, and it's pretty neat to walk the trail on this northern face of the Vienta Cone, because you get these beautiful views of Pine Valley and then the Carmel Valley to the north, and you can also see pretty beautiful views of the eastern aspect of the park. So that's that area. We also did a little bit of volunteer trail work just on the portion of Black Cone Trail where it turns to orange pretty quickly. So, but Pine Ridge from there and back is really good. Okay, let's jump into Google Earth just for fun. So we're going to export this file as a KML, keyhole markup language, and we will transition into Google Earth, do a Command O, Big Sur loop. Open up this file and take a good look here. So getting onto this trail system here, we'll pivot around, heading towards Cigna Camp. Trail conditions deteriorate a little bit. It's overgrown and there's some poison oak to avoid for sure. A lot of grass on this slope, but it is passable. Let's get the trail name here real quick. Big Sur Trail is the trail name going to Cigna campsite. There's really not any water until you get to the Cigna Creek, and there is water there. The other thing I noticed, this is a pretty small campsite, but it's a cool one. From there, it's a pretty short hike up and over this saddle to the Big Sur River. We did some brushing here, which just means, in general, just using our garden clippers to clip away some of the vegetation that had overgrown on the trail so that you have a little bit more of a pleasant journey getting to the North Fork of the Big Sur River. So trail's in pretty good condition there. This is a nice place to have a good lunch or a snack before doing this pretty audacious climb up and over this pass here towards the South Fork. And let's check our trail name again from the topo. Big Sur Trail, yep. And we can see that this is a pretty steep switchbacky climb. If we look at our elevation profile here, we can see how big it is. Going back to Google Earth, we will pivot around so we can see it right in front of us in 3 dimensions. This trail just zigzags up here, switchbacks quite a bit. The lower parts of the trail needed some slight brushing, and we used our garden clippers to try and clean it up a little bit as we went up. But overall, this trail segment's in pretty good condition going up this face to this saddle. And just hats off to everybody who worked to cut out all the brush there, whether you're an employee or a volunteer. That was really nice, because it is just tunnels of vegetation getting to this saddle. Coming to this side, we'll pivot around. So I'm just holding command and spinning the mouse wheel. You descend very steeply, and the trail conditions, I would say, go to yellow again. There's a lot of grass, a lot less trees that you're passing through. There's some poison oak. So make sure you're wearing like long pants so that you don't get the poison oak directly on your skin, and just do a good wash when you get down to Rainbow Camp. Rainbow Camp's a big trail junction, and it can be a little confusing. Make sure you read the signs. It looks like you would just climb back up the switchback, but that's going to take you this way up the South Fork River. So if you're heading back to the Ridge Road, make sure you continue northward this direction through the camp and then up the drainage. So we'll talk about this segment. We actually camped here on our second night of our 3-day backpack. Had a really nice evening, and this is a pretty low elevation, so we woke up very early to start this climb. Over here is Mocho Camp, and it's a very small campsite, so just keep that in mind. There's Mocho Creek coming on down here. Trail switchbacks up. This trail segment I would call there was volunteers who recently brushed segments of it, but there's also some segments that are overgrown. So we tried to do some brushing as well with our garden clippers, just try and make it a little bit better. So just expect it to be green in spots and yellow in spots as you climb over this hill, down into this valley, and then back up this ridge line. You're just kind of zigzagging your way up to here. The other thing to note is there's pretty good water. So you can get water in Mocho Creek, and then you can get water in this unnamed creek Let's see if there's a name on our topo map. There is not. This creek has water. I'm going to change the layers to see if we can find a creek name on. No name there. Maybe on the visitor layer we'll find a name. Don't see a name there. Okay, we'll just go back to Google Earth. Anyway, we get up to the ridge line here, and you get a nice ocean view, as you can see. Pivot around. And from here, the trail's in really nice condition overall, all the way to Cold Spring Camp. And you can see this water tank here from the ridgeline, and that's where your next water is going to be. There is a little stock tank that has some pretty disgusting water that you definitely need to treat, but also this creek right here was flowing, and that's where I filled water. And from here to the next water, you're on the road system for the most part. There's the Summit Road. Right here is, we missed this and took this road all the way around Timber Top, but if you're paying attention to your map, you can take a little trail around to this road system on the other side, have a little shorter trip and more of a coastal view. Rejoins the road right there. And yeah, don't expect any water along this ridge. So we're continuing northward, beautiful coastal views. And then you get to here and drop down. I think a house is being built somewhere, maybe like right here, because there's a lot of heavy machinery just kind of driving around. Anyway, drop down into Terrace Creek, and trail conditions are probably yellow at the start. It's pretty vegetated in terms of grasses. You can bomb down pretty quick. This is a very, very steep descent, so be careful. It's a little loose in segments. And where you cross the creek the first time, it's still dry. So it's not until you get down into here where you start seeing these big redwoods that you first see water, like kind of like in this region. But there are some nice spots before you get too low where you could refill water or have a lunch break if you want. And then, of course, there's the Terrace Creek camp here. And it's a pretty big campsite as you get to the back to Big Sur Junction. We already talked about this segment of the trail, so that's really all I got for you guys today. Last thing I'll say in terms of advocacy is if you like this park or you don't like it, please remember that you should follow leave no trace principles. Definitely leave it better than you found it. Pick up any trash you see, and try and volunteer 1 day per year with the Ventana Wilderness Alliance, and consider donating to their non-for-profit. I try and donate every time I visit this area. Thanks for watching. We'll see you around.